even going back to jokes, I mean, it's interesting about jokes. You have this book, this Greek book called Philogelos, I think it's called, which is laughter lever. And it has something that sort of looks like jokes. They're not very good. They're bad jokes. They're like, the intellectual found that his pants were too tight, so he shaved his legs. Sort of like that. You have you have that, but they're very few. Then jokes, even of that like, are almost completely lost. There's repartee, there's quick comebacks and stuff, and then there's Joe Miller's jest book, which aren't really jokes at all. They're more like moral examples. There's something like a minister was talking very loudly, and a woman in front started to cry and cry, and he said, "I am so pleased that I have moved you so much by my sermon." And she said, "No, you just remind me of the brain of my donkey who has died." So they don't really have it yet. And then there's a little moral that comes after that. The truth is, almost all of our modern forms of humor come out of a commercial culture of humor that started to exist in the United States and in England after the Civil War, in which originally there's variety and then there's vaudeville. And it's interesting, you can look at guidebooks from vaudeville from the 1880s where they start to talk about material, comic material, stuff produced. Now that's very interesting. You wouldn't say that a novel is material or a poem is material. But so you start to have people actually write jokes for other performers. By 1900, you have people who are making $30,000 a year in vaudeville, so there's a business of it. There may be 3 joke books in all of existence before, the middle of the 19th century, and by 1900 there are thousands of them. And there are rate cards for what we pay for jokes. And in this time, what we know as the joke actually is invented. The joke that really has a punchline, that works in a complicated way, in which sometimes it seems to have a point, but often it has no point at all. The interesting thing about it is that it bears no relation to truth, some of these jokes, and all they want to do is entertain. Guy is feeling lonely, and so he goes to a pet store. He wants an unusual pet. And he asks the guy, "Yeah, I got an unusual pet. What do you got?" And the guy says, "I have a talking cat. I have a talking centipede." Oh, that's great. Now, of course, right away, that's a fantastic thing. Everything about that is wrong, untrue, cannot be. The centipedes are not pets. This is violating the truth maxim. They're not pets, and they don't talk. But anyway, for the purpose of the joke, we move on. Guy takes the centipede home. He builds a nice little box for him. They're getting along great. Really, he talks. Centipede's a virtual raconteur, can talk on anything. Finally, he says, "Hey," he yells into the box, let's go down to Joe's for a beer and a few drinks." "Okay," another falsehood. Centipedes can't go down to bars. They can't drink. They don't drink alcohol. We don't care. It's a joke, right? Okay. He keeps yelling in and no answer. Finally, the centipede, says, "Would you give me a little fucking time? I'm putting on my shoes." Okay, so these types of jokes, there's no moral in that. We don't learn anything about centipedes. We don't learn anything about that. This came out of the vaudeville aesthetic, and the vaudeville aesthetic was the presentation aesthetic. The only thing that exists is the moment and to please that audience. So you have lots of jokes that start to get written. Now, one of the reasons why people think jokes have always existed because there's a lot of stealing jokes. There's a lot of remanipulation of jokes. What's really interesting is the joke becomes this transportable, portable sense of humor, stripped of all its context, which anybody can tell, and which also can be manipulated to create new jokes. So it's like a joke factory. So the joke which says, I went to a restaurant the other day and I asked the waiter I want some cold soup, some burnt steak, and melted ice cream. I said, "I can't do that." You say, "You just did it yesterday." Okay, that's the same joke that gets manipulated as I went to the airport the other day and I said, "I want this luggage to go to Toronto, this to Ohio, and this to France." And they say, "I can't do that. You did it last month." So this is the thing that develops as a type of really, and that's what's really interesting. Jokes as we know them are a relatively recent invention. An even more recent invention are cartoons. cartoons, you do have, Benjamin Franklin will all hang together or will hang separately. You have these editorial cartoons. You have these very long, worked out sketches in Punch where there's, much, much dialogue. But eventually, what happens to the joke happens to the cartoon, and it starts to get compressed down to simply one line, the purpose of which is the joke. So with James Thurber, before in the New Yorker, the original cartoons in 1925 are very much sort of long and lugubrious, and then eventually the cartoons get compressed down to where it's a James Thurber cartoon where there's two people are dueling, one person has knocked the head off another person and he's saying touche. So it gets down to a single word.